What she didn't realize is that that very behavior, once she became a leader, is the very thing that worked against her. Okay, so right now we're going through some of the key concepts in this book I wrote called The 7 Management Polarities, a tactical handbook to leading teams. And what I'm going to talk about today is illustrated by one of my clients, Jane, who is very high up in a really powerful investment company. And Jane was known to outperform a lot of her peers. Her and her team were making millions upon millions of dollars for the company, and so she was kind of a rock star. Jane called me in because she was starting to see problems in the team. Namely, she was watching as turnover was much higher than other peers. She was sensing that she wasn't getting really good information anymore. She could feel burnout. She also noticed people didn't like to look her in the eyes when they're walking around the office. There was kind of a lack of connection, and she was looking for a little bit of help about how to deal with that, what the problem might be, how to fix her team. When I came in, I did what I often do with my private clients is I interviewed all the key stakeholders. And one of the things that I found is that Jane was guilty of being out of balance on one of these 7 management polarities. And here's what I learned about her behavior. She was known by her team as kind of a ballistic missile, that she had really strong opinions, she had a lot of clarity about how things should be, and she had no qualms about telling people about it immediately and often. And so for Jane, this was just part of doing business. You know, you got a good idea, you give that good idea, and you keep moving. There's no reason to slow down because we're not here running a charity. We're here to make money and to get results. And she got a lot of those results, and she got rewarded for that hard-charging, direct behavior. What she didn't realize is that that very behavior, once she became a leader, is the very thing that worked against her. Because here's what started to happen. The more ballistic, like a ballistic missile she was, the more she would create a big emotional wake, and the more people wanted to get out of the line of fire. What that meant was they stopped wanting to interact with her. Not only did they stop wanting to interact with her, they were very, very judicious about what information they shared because they didn't want to be in the line of fire. So that meant that she wasn't getting good data anymore. Her dashboard gauges were not hooked up properly. She was getting turnover, which actually was kind of unusual because people make so much money in the industry. She was having turnover and she didn't know why. Well, the reason was because people didn't enjoy being berated. They didn't like being called out directly all the time. And what that meant was she was losing that performance because of the way she was showing up. And she was guilty of being out of balance on the polarity between getting results and how people feel in their performance. This is a polarity. Sometimes results you've got a privilege, doesn't matter how somebody feels about it, and sometimes how somebody feels about it is going to negatively impact results. So you've got to be aware of both. That's the whole point of a polarity. You can't have one without the other. So what I did is I sat down with Jane and I walked her through some of the techniques that I teach in my Next Level Leader program, namely verbal cues. I actually had her memorize a whole set of verbal cues that I make sure she would not say anymore. Here are all the things you want to say. Here's what you need to say instead. So instead of saying, you're not listening, you could say, I'm not being clear, let me try again. The focus is on I, not you. I'm not accusing anymore. I'm owning my part. Little tiny things like that. I call them switches. And they're these little word packets that I had her memorize. We also talked about some protocols, some rules of engagement, like a military commander, rules of engagement for how to have hard conversations. Now, it took some time because there was a lot of trust that was breached in the team. But what happened was, over a period of about 12 months, her team started sticking around longer. They started getting her better information. They started wanting to go into her office to seek her out, to get her advice, to give her feedback and input, and things were starting to work. And sure enough, her team started to perform even better. Now, the team wasn't performing bad to begin with. It was doing really well. It was outperforming her peers. The problem was people weren't enjoying working. And in that polarity, when enjoyment goes down, performance eventually will begin to suffer. And what you saw was her actual potential as a leader was almost double what she was already doing. And so that's why this is so critical. Now, if you're looking for help and you're wanting to know, am I out of balance? Or maybe you work for somebody like that who is out of balance and you yourself are not like that, this book, 7 Management Polarities, will help you understand how to deal with people like that and or if you've got that issue yourself, it'll help you understand how to manage it better. You can also reach out to me. I do private one-to-one calls. I do free session one time, and we can talk about what your issues are and help you get solutions. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.